Illustrations of the IPA, British English, Received Pronunciation, presented by Peter Roach. What is received pronunciation? Received pronunciation, the name is usually shortened to RP, is an accent of British English, and for at least a century it's been seen as the standard accent. Among the many accents of British English, RP is the usual starting point for a description of British English pronunciation. Almost all the speakers who have this accent have been born in England. Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales have their own distinctive accents. RP is essentially an accent of England, not of Great Britain. We need to look at what the name received pronunciation stands for, because the name doesn't have an obvious meaning. Received in this context means accepted or agreed. The phrases received opinion and received wisdom are comparable. Many other names have been suggested for this accent, but none has been generally accepted. Where is RP spoken and who speaks it? Geographically, RP has often been described as being a non-regional accent, belonging equally to all parts of the United Kingdom. In reality, it is far more frequently heard in London and the southeast of England than elsewhere. In British society, it's associated with private education in the so-called public school system, and in professions of influence such as the law, the armed forces, politics, university teaching and management. As a result, RP is looked on by some people in a negative way as the accent of prestige used by an elite class. But less controversially, it has a long-established place in pronunciation teaching and in broadcasting. RP is used in the great majority of published pronunciation teaching material produced for learners of British English in both textbooks and dictionaries. In the early days of the BBC, RP was explicitly adopted as the standard to be used by all official speakers. Nowadays, the BBC has many speakers with regional or ethnic accents. However, RP is still the usual accent in the BBC for English-born news readers and announcers on serious channels such as BBC Radio 3 and Radio 4 and BBC TV News. RP speakers. Nobody knows how many RP speakers there are, and there's no scientific way of finding out. But everyone agrees that the number is small when seen as a percentage of the British population. It's very difficult to make a clear identification of someone as an RP speaker, as each speaker has their own idiolect. There is no pure RP that a uniform group of speakers speak without deviation from the standard. Like all accents, RP is continuously evolving, so the accent described as RP a century ago sounds very different from the speech of a young RP speaker today, as we can hear in recordings. Also, it's difficult to draw a line between the accent of today's young RP speakers and what is known popularly as estuary English. Some writers suggest dividing RP into subtypes such as conservative RP, typical of older speakers, mainstream RP, advanced RP, URP, and so on. Some have even suggested, surprisingly, that there could be regional varieties of RP showing some features that are excluded from traditional RP, such as having the vowel of cat in words such as bath or grass. The phonemes of RP. We represent the phonemes of RP with phonemic symbols. Everyone knows that English spelling can be very misleading as a guide to pronunciation. The symbols used here are those devised by A.C. Gimson for the 14th edition of the English Pronouncing Dictionary. In some cases, symbols that we use to represent phonemes are also used in phonetic transcription based on the International Phonetic Alphabet, representing slightly different sounds. This can be confusing. For example, the present-day vowel in bed is different from the cardinal vowel e, and the present-day vowel in law is different from the cardinal vowel o. Such differences are largely due to changes in pronunciation since the symbols were first chosen, and some modernization is now needed. RP consonants. There are many cases of paired consonants for example, pin and bin, which are presented side by side in charts. The members of these pairs are often referred to as voiceless and voiced, but these terms do not accurately describe their phonetic quality. Many phoneticians prefer not to label these sounds as voiceless and voiced, using instead the Latin terms fortis and lenis, which suggest a weaker articulation or sound in the case of the voiced consonants, which are lenis, and a stronger articulation or sound in the case of voiceless consonants, fortis. The phonemes r, w, sh, j, ch, and j are usually pronounced with rounded lips, as in red, way, ship, beige, chin, gin. We also find syllabic consonants, where a consonant constitutes a syllable with no vowel. The low line mark under the consonant symbol indicates this. For example, bottle, button, buttering. RP consonant chart. The chart is organized in line with the International Phonetic Alphabet, so that from left to right it shows the place of articulation, and from top to bottom the type or manner of articulation. Below that are some keywords to help identify the consonants. Here are the words for plosives and fricatives. P, B, toe, dough, cap, gap, fat, that, thing, this, sip, zip, ship, measure, hat. Next we have the affricates, chin, gin. There are 3 nasal consonants, map, nap, hang, and 4 approximants, lead, red, yet, wet. More on RP consonants. In conservative RP, some speakers have a voiceless w, phonetically wh, in words such as which, where. This sound is still widely found in Scottish and American accents. In words such as huge, human, the phonemic transcriptions huge, human imply that the words begin with a voiceless fricative h, followed by a voiced approximant y, but the initial sound is phonetically a single sound hy, voiceless palatal fricative. The phoneme l has 2 allophones. Before a vowel, its pronunciation is clear l, while before a consonant or pause, it is dark l. So the sound is clear in lie, allow, and it's dark in I'll, halt. The glottal stop in RP. In conservative RP, the glottal stop is almost never heard, except as a hard vowel onset. For example, absolutely awful. The glottal stop is never a phoneme of English. In modern RP, there is often glottal reinforcement of p, t, k, ch. The consonant is preceded by a glottal stop. Ripeness, frightful, auction, butcher. Glottal replacement, particularly of t, is often heard in contemporary RP if the consonant is followed by another consonant. When the t in get is followed by another consonant, we hear, for example, get better. This is now widespread in RP. Glottal replacement of t between vowels is not generally accepted as RP. Getting better. RP vowels. We start with pure vowels. The chart on the left shows the vowels laid out on a cardinal vowel diagram, and some example words are shown on the right. Short vowels: pit, pet, pat, cut, pot, put. Long vowels: key, half, paw, coo, cur. RP vowels, weak vowels. The schwa vowel, never occurs in stressed syllables. In addition to this vowel, I and U have long been recognized as vowels that frequently occur in unstressed syllables. For example, borderline, appetite, influenza. More recently, it has been suggested that the symbols I and U could be used to represent weak versions of I and U in words such as happy and influence, where they are not followed by a consonant. Current pronunciation dictionaries use these symbols, but I and U are not claimed to be phonemes of RP, and some experts believe there is no need to use them at all. RP vowels, closing diphthongs. These are diphthongs where the movement of the tongue is from a more open position towards more close. We have bay, buy, boy, go, cow. RP vowels, centering diphthongs. RP has traditionally been said to have centering diphthongs, where the movement is from a relatively extreme outer vowel position towards a central vowel position. Here we have peer, pair, poor. In present-day RP, the movement of this diphthong is much smaller, and for some speakers there is no movement towards schwa at all. The diphthongs have become long vowels, giving pear, pair, poor. RP vowels, triphthongs. True triphthongs are composed of 3 vowels produced in one continuous movement within one syllable. In RP, the triphthongs are formed from one of the closing diphthongs a, I, oi, followed by a glide to schwa. Examples: layer, fire, royal. There are problems with triphthongs. Some speakers have 2 syllables in these words, which are therefore not really triphthongs. Layer, fire, royal. Some have such a small change of vowel quality that the sound is almost a pure vowel. Layer, fire, royal. Prosody of RP. Stress. It's usual to identify 3 levels of stress in English words of more than one syllable. There is primary stress in open, person, above, below. There are secondary stresses in entertain, controversial, and there are unstressed syllables. All the syllables in the above word that do not have a stress mark are considered unstressed. Rules to predict the placement of stress in English words and longer units of speech are complex and have many exceptions. Prosody of RP. Intonation. Many attempts have been made to analyze the intonation of RP, but there seems to be nothing to distinguish it from that of other accents of English. Usually, speech is divided into short pieces called tone units. Each tone unit contains 1 syllable, the tonic syllable or nucleus, which is the most prominent. This tonic syllable will carry one of a small number of tonal patterns which carry some information about emotion and/or grammatical context. The pitch pattern may be falling, rising, rising, or rising, falling. Other stressed syllables may be marked as having high or low pitch. Prosody of RP. Rhythm. RP, like the other accents of British English, is said to have the type of rhythm called stress-timed. In stress-timed rhythm, stressed syllables tend to occur at regular time intervals, while unstressed syllables are compressed into the time between stresses. For example, most of the children were away. Other languages, such as Spanish, are said to have syllable-timed rhythm, where every syllable tends to take the same amount of time. For example, la mayoría de las niñas estaban lejos.
The north wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger, when a traveller came along, wrapped in a warm cloak. They agreed that the one who first succeeded in making the traveller take his cloak off should be considered stronger than the other. Then the north wind blew as hard as he could. But the more he blew, the more closely did the traveller fold his cloak around him, and at last the north wind gave up the attempt. Then the sun shone out warmly, and immediately the traveller took off his cloak, and so the north wind was obliged to confess that the sun was the stronger of the 2. The north wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger, when a traveller came along, wrapped in a warm cloak. They agreed that the one who first succeeded in making the traveller take his cloak off should be considered stronger than the other. Then the north wind blew as hard as he could. But the more he blew, the more closely did the traveller fold his cloak around him, and at last the north wind gave up the attempt. Then the sun shone out warmly, and immediately the traveller took off his cloak, and so the north wind was obliged to confess that the sun was the stronger of the two. The north wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger, when a traveller came along, wrapped in a warm cloak. They agreed that the one who first succeeded in making the traveller take his cloak off should be considered stronger than the other. Then the north wind blew as hard as he could. But the more he blew, the more closely did the traveller fold his cloak around him, and at last the north wind gave up the attempt. Then the sun shone out warmly, and immediately the traveller took off his cloak, and so the north wind was obliged to confess that the sun was the stronger of the two.